The Mystara project is proud to present Part 4 of the Characters of Mystara series. In this episode, we shall feature the Emirates ambassador to Karameikos, Abdallah ibn Hamid. Abdallah was introduced on page 48 of Gaz 1, The Grand Duchy of Karameikos, published in 1987. Abdallah is tall and thin, standing at 6'2" and only weighing 165 pounds. From his appearance, Abdallah appears to be somewhere between 25 and 50 years old as of the 1st of Newmont AC 1000. This would mean he was born between AC 949 and AC 974. Abdallah was probably born into a nomadic Alasian tribe that spends spring and summer in the Emirate of Dithysdenia. He was also probably the first-born male heir of his father Hamid, the sheikh of the tribe. Young Abdallah would likely have learnt his skills from his father. First and foremost, Abdallah learnt about the eternal truth and became a follower. He saw how the tribe could find water in the harsh desert and other desert survival skills. He learnt to speak the Thyacian language, a common tongue in the region of southeast Brunei. He learned how to ride a horse. He practiced using the scimitar, spear, short bow, and lance. He mimicked the great storytellers of his tribe, developing his own lyrical style. He also possessed the knack of persuasion. Abdallah would probably have seen his first combat action at age 14. During his teens, he would have become more proficient with his favored weapon, the scimitar. His knowledge of the Emirates was building and he had learnt the desert cavalry techniques of the Alasian nomad. At some stage Abdallah succeeded his father as the sheikh. It is possible that his father, Hamid, met an untimely end fighting the denizens of the Ultan Tepe mountains who often raid Dithysdenia. Goblins, orcs, hobgoblins, bugbears, trolls, hill giant and stone giants are known raiders. Sometimes they act in concert. Abdallah battled these raiders many times, gaining a reputation of courage throughout the Emirates. Also making a martial reputation for himself at this time was the adventurer, Günther Schönberg. Of Hattian Thyacian ancestry, Günther had been hired as a mercenary by the Thyacian commander of Fort Nikos to be part of a patrol against Alasian insurgents who were active in the region. Günther, at 6'5", weighing 300 pounds and wearing a bearskin cloak, left a lasting and bloody impression on his enemies. Although Sheikh Abdallah did not personally encounter Günther at this time, he certainly knew of this beast of a man. Abdallah was also gaining fame as a lyrical storyteller of some note. Emir Daud Hadi of Dithysdenia hosted a feast at his palace in Ctesiphon for his sheikhs and qadis and Sultan Muhammad al-Kalim. Although Abdallah was surrounded by what he considered soft Hazar, the nomad sheikh put that aside to entertain the gathering with rousing stories of his tribe's adventures against the monsters of the Ultan Tepes. The Sultan was so impressed, he appointed Abdallah as ambassador to Karameikos. Specifically, Abdallah was to persuade the Karameikans to coordinate military efforts against the humanoids of the Ultan Tepes. So Abdallah left his tribe in the hands of its elders and travelled to Specularum. Whilst Abdallah was underwhelmed by the Karameikans he met, a few people stood out. Duke Stefan Karameikos III earned Abdallah's respect as a great and honourable warrior. To his disgust, Abdallah came face to face with the Thyacian mercenary, Günther Schönberg. Somehow, he had become the Erendian ambassador to Karameikos. Only Abdallah's duty to his sultan has prevented him from challenging Günther to a duel to the death. Should he be provoked, he might anyway. Apart from great and honourable warriors, Abdallah is very partial to great beauty. Despite being a sorcerer and an unbeliever from the decadent land of Glantry, Abdallah has become obsessed with Lady Marianita Lucia de Leon e Valdez. He attempts to woo the diminutive Glantrian ambassador at every opportunity, but has so far been met with flat rejection. As Marianita has remarked, he has all the grace and diplomacy of a camel in heat, only not as entertaining. In Specularum, Abdallah sees himself as a desert wolf surrounded by sheep. He views most people with contempt and appears to be a cold and arrogant man. He often complains by saying, "A man's life is as the guardian immortals dictate it. It is my fate, alas, to be here in this cold, wet land." Now let's examine Abdallah's stats. Abdallah is an 11th level fighter, which is on the low side for a sheikh. The qadis of the Kirkuk tribes, who are subordinate to sheikhs, range from normal man to 16th level. Abdallah, however, has exceptional abilities. He is equally the strongest and most dexterous human alive. His charisma, constitution, and intelligence are all above average. Unfortunately, his charisma does not seem to translate across cultures. His weak point is his wisdom, which is at the lower end of the average range. His neutral alignment gives him some flexibility, whilst trying not to clearly violate the eternal truth. Abdallah's skills are naturally suited to the life of a desert nomad. He is most skilled at horse riding with about 90% proficiency. He has put a lot of effort into desert survival, and has about 75% proficiency. He is also about 75% proficient at persuasion and storytelling, which are now assisting his diplomatic efforts. Rounding out his skills is his knowledge of desert cavalry techniques and the Emirates in general at about 65% proficiency. It is unknown if Abdallah has trained in weapon mastery, but he may have achieved grand mastery in the scimitar. Abdallah prefers to be lightly encumbered for agility and to cope with the Emirates' heat. He wears leather armor, which in combination with his dexterity, gives him an armor class of 4. Grand mastery of the scimitar allows him the opportunity to try to deflect 3 handheld or thrown attacks per round. His scimitar is jeweled and is perhaps an heirloom of the sheikhs of his tribe. He carries a copy of the Nameh around with him as a follower of the eternal truth. One of his prized possessions is his superior Alassian steed, Najm, which means star. Ghazwan provides some adventure hooks for using Abdallah in a campaign. Abdallah is a difficult man to deal with and probably will coldly ignore the player characters unless they are at least 9th level. The On the Road to Alaruam scenario assumes that Abdallah has been successful in his diplomacy to coordinate Emirates and Karameikan military efforts against the humanoids of the Ultan Tepes. Characters of levels 4 to 9 are asked by a Karameikan official to join the Mountain Storm Battalion at Castellan Keep, to mount an offensive against the humanoids of the Ultan Tepes. According to the write-up, they are supposed to push north, which would lead them eventually to southwestern Makistan after a series of battles. Another suggested adventure hook revolves around Abdallah and Marianita. Abdallah eventually insults Marianita's honor. Being a hot-tempered Belkadisan woman, Marianita challenges Abdallah to a duel. But this is not gallantry, spellcasting is prohibited from duels. Marianita suddenly realizes she is at a great disadvantage, so she requests a player character fighter to step in for her. No matter the outcome, following the duel, Abdallah makes the rash choice of drugging Marianita. He kidnaps her and starts making his way back to the Emirates. Duchess Olivia Karameikos' spy network discovers what has happened. To avoid an international incident, she asks Emilio the Great to hire the player characters to rescue Marianita, preferably before she gains consciousness. The characters have a difficult task to defuse the crisis. This concludes our look at the proud, hot-tempered, nomadic warrior sheikh from Dithastina, Abdallah ibn Hamid.